Hello, beautiful people of Inside Time, and welcome to today's live session with myself, Psychic Carla, for a prayer session, which, I think is really important at this time. I've been feeling into the prayers most of this day, and I'd definitely like to take a lot of requests today. So I'd like for you to contemplate what is it that you are praying for at this time. And I really feel called to talk a little bit about the polarity of light and dark. And I think it is energetically a very powerful moment. Of course, we've just moved through the solstice. We're still sitting with some of that solstice energy. We're approaching the birthday of Jesus, or at least the allocated birthday of Jesus, which of course coincides with the solstice. And of course, we're sitting in a time on planet Earth where a lot of the darkness, which has been ever present for millennia, is really being revealed. And I think that, as challenging as that can be to witness, to see, to experience, that we so often forget that there is a powerful blessing in that revealing. And let's just bring it to the self-work for a moment. Because the self-work, right, if you look at yourself, your psychology, you as an individual, which of course is always connected to the collective, and we'll talk about that mirror as well. But when you think about the self-work, it's not just love and light. It's not just rainbows and bunnies. There is a lot of shadow work. There is a lot of revealing of the things that need to be released, that need to be shifted, that need to be seen. And in order for us to release those dark aspects of self, it is important for us to integrate and love it as well. And when we can love those dark parts of ourselves, that is when it will stop acting out on our personal lives, right? So, for example, if you think of that cycle, it's a very typical cycle that happens. Let's say, I'll give a specific example, but we talk about the victim-perpetrator cycle. But let's look at, for example, the cycle of child abuse running through a family line. What will happen is a child is abused, and that child, if that child does not work through their trauma and of course illuminate and etc., will eventually become an abuser of their own children. And so the cycle will perpetuate and continue down the bloodline until some brave soul comes through to go, okay, that happened to me. I can let that make me into a angry, bitter human being, and I can persecute my parents and then inflict the same trauma onto my children. Or I can learn to love the part of myself that desires to hurt someone else because of what I have been through. Understanding that that split in the psyche occurs because a person is traumatized. And of course, we can take the mirror of that and reflect it onto the global narrative as things are being witnessed right now, where the state of Israel, which problematically is often associated very definitely with Judaism, which of course many Jewish people are not associated or affiliated with the state or with ongoing traumas, but we can see the perpetuation of that cycle of abuse continuing as a collective peoples because of an unhealed trauma. And even if we just look at the greater cycle of colonialism, for example, now I'll give the example of, let's say, Great Britain, which was, I believe, the biggest colonial power at one point, of course. And if we, and of course the amount of trauma that has been inflicted upon First People nations by the British is honestly not comprehensible. It's so massive. But if we go back further into the archives, if we look back far enough, the people of Britain, the original peoples of Britain, are also a colonized people. And so this cycle has been continuing, and at some point we need to witness the cycle from a greater perspective and to see it reflected in our own personal selves, because when we turn around and point our fingers and blame another, right? Your fault. We give our power away, for one. And for another, when we use abusive language even towards the perpetrator, right? Firstly, we're sending curses when people do that. And I'm seeing a lot of curses being sent out at this time in both directions, of course. In all directions, of course. And, this might sound a little bit problematic, but I do think that there are moments where it's not so black and white in terms of there are gray areas. If you are on your piece of land and someone invades that land, to curse them, is that such a bad thing? That's a defense mechanism. I get it. We cannot understand the kind of trauma that people are moving through when they are within that conflict. So I'm not even trying to call out peoples who are within those conflicts at all. However, I think that a lot of the finger pointing, naming, shaming, guilting, and blaming that is happening on the global stage right now, while it is justified, and I think that that's also something important to acknowledge, while people also really need to express their anger, right? People need an outlet. People deserve to express their anger, right? And a lot of that anger is very righteous. It's got a very huge cause. I think it's also important, and again, I'm saying come from compassion, even when you see a post that makes you go, right, that you don't know what that person is experiencing, what they are going through. But I would like to encourage each and every one of you to do your best to be conscious with your words, especially if you're not sitting in a space where anger is boiling up. Because of course, if anger is boiling up, hello Shah from Canada, lovely to see you here, that needs to be expressed, and I encourage you to consider what the best way to express that is for you, right? We're not talking about gaslighting or burying the anger, but I think it takes an incredibly brave soul to be able to witness and not look away, to witness what is unfolding and to ask, and here's the real key question, to ask, where is it within myself that I perpetuate that same kind of energy? And how can I witness this and use it as fuel to transform myself and to inspire myself towards action that may lead to change in a way that feels good for me as an individual? And that will look different for each and every one. And let's just talk a little bit for a moment about that polarity of light and dark, because it can be incredibly difficult right now as we sit with the highlighting of so much dark to forget how much light there is. Lovely to connect in India, to Bali, to Canada, to many beautiful places of the world. Lauren, I think, is in Australia. Absolutely magical. And the first thing I'm going to do is talk about this idea of polarity just for a moment. And I'll just say that this is a teaching I'm borrowing from a teacher of mine called Nathan Rath. If any of you want to look him up, he's an incredible spiritual teacher based in South Africa, and really specializing in astral projection and dream work. But, that's all linked in with spiritual teachings. But I really enjoyed this definition, which I'll paraphrase. But he talked about polarities not as opposites, as two different separate things are totally on the, totally different from each other, but rather as one side of something else. So he gave the example of hot and cold as either side of this one thing called temperature. Right? This one thing called temperature. And when we can see in a more integrative manner this idea of the polarity, and we can see that that is all a part of us too, instead of this pushing away, demonizing, what's the word here? Shaming, guilting, and going, how can I hold space for this? How can I ensure within myself that I never perpetuate this same kind of violence again? How can I love the part of me that wishes to inflict that kind of violence? The other thing that I want to say about light and dark, and this time I'm going to borrow a teaching from Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now. I'm sure many of you know about this teaching. And Eckhart Tolle talks about light and dark, or love and fear is actually the terms he uses, which really I'm going to equate with the same energy. Love and dark, love and fear, light and dark, right? This is really what we're talking about. He talks about it on a number line. And again, we can weave that together with the previous teaching in terms of, well, it's one number line. It's just one end of the number line and the other end of the number line. And of course, the zero is in the middle. And when we imagine that love is the side where we go plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that fear is on the other side, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. And if we just look at the example of counting sheep, for example, right? We can understand that if we have 2 sheep, we can see 2 sheep, there are 2 sheep present. But when we have minus 2 sheep, this is just a concept. But the sheep do not exist. It is the lack of the sheep that is present. The lack of the love. So it is a space void of love. And what happens when we bring love there? What happens when we see ourselves connected to it all? What happens when we take responsibility for the collective? What happens when we take responsibility, the ability that we have to respond, to take action? The next thing I would like to do is to talk a bit about the power of words. You know, in the book of Genesis, in the beginning, there was God and there was the Word. And God used the Word in order to separate out the light and the dark. And then there was day, and then there was night. And God used the Word over 7 days. Of course, this 7 days is a metaphor. He used word to create. Now, I think there are always multiple ways to interpret things, but I would like to just present at least some food for thought here. But I suggest, as many have before me, that the book of Genesis is essentially teaching us, because of course we were created in the image and the likeness of God the Creator. It is a manual of how we can create. And so when you become aware of the creative power of words, and you become aware of your connection to all things, even what is happening in a country far away, even what is going on in the minds of mass murderers, we too are responsible for transmuting that. And so this Christmas, I invite you to contemplate on the power we have in words. And there is a lot of energy and focus in, the love and light communities, which I find a little bit one-sided at times. While there's a lot of power in focusing on the love and the light so that we can grow that, it is not to ignore what is being seen. Because if you were in a home and you saw a child being abused, would you turn away? Or would you use your ability to respond, your responsibility to shield and protect that child? Or would you say it's none of my business, or it's too complicated? A lot of focus is put on the ability that we have in words to bless, to call in, to create abundance, to magnetize and manifest your life of your dreams. And all of that is beautiful and valid. Yet our words also have the ability to curse. And especially if you are a spiritually powerful person, those words have more weight. If you are a person that is meditating every day and you have willpower and you practice magic and you curse someone, your karma will be greater than someone who does not yield that power. If you are consciously manifesting for yourself and working with affirmation, you have greater power than someone who does not understand the power of their voice. And you need to shoulder greater responsibility, and that need not feel heavy. It is, in fact, a privilege. It is, in fact, a privilege. Alright, let's see the comments here. Someone pulled the ancestors are calling home card. Does this mean death? That's an interesting question there, Pamela. Someone pulled the ancestors are calling home. I think that there are multiple interpretations to that, and death could be one of them. But death is certainly a way to come home. But there are ways to come home to your soul. There are ways to come home to your heart. There are ways to come home to your truth. There are ways to come home to your power. Death is one way to do all of those things. Death is incredibly powerful. Actually, I'm going to tell a story now. Mary, protect. Yes, that would be my choice as well, Mary. And I hope that would be everyone's choice. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. These are the choices, and of course that even those choices will have some consequences, right? Might rub some people up the wrong way, might not be successful. You need to be believed, you need proof, you need evidence, right? You need help, you need aid. But there are ways, there are means. There are ways and there are means. I'm going to tell a story about death. Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carla. I'm a psychic and a channel for the group of higher dimensional light beings that I call the Blue Team. It is my privilege and honor to share some of that energy with you today, and to connect with you on this eve of Christmas, a very sacred holiday. And of course, Christmas has been cancelled in many parts of the world, including the birthplace of Jesus, Bethlehem, as there is ongoing genocide in the home, the ancestral lands of Jesus. Before I talk about death, I would like to firstly say I talk to dead people. I'm a medium, I'm a channel. I have died in this life before. I have had death experiences. I was, from a young child, I remembered multiple different death experiences from previous lives. I am very fortunate. Now, of course, you don't have to believe that. That's your choice, and whatever you believe will be your truth. This is how I see. This is my experience, and I've always had that innate knowing of being a very old soul and having lived many lives, and having lived many lives that were not always very ethical or very kind. I have killed many people in past lives and committed atrocious acts. And let me tell you, so have you. So have you. We all have. We all have past life stuff that we carry with us. I know I entered into this life to purify a lot of karma. I did not have an easy childhood by any means. And in each moment and many, many times, I have had the choice to choose a different path. But in each turning point in my life, I have chosen to open my heart and forgive my perpetrators. And I have chosen to love them. Now, I know not everyone is ready for that. And I don't even expect everyone to be ready for that. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of faith and trust to be able to let go in that kind of a way. And so it is with a lot of conviction that I can say, death is not the end. that there is liberation in death. Now, of course, I am not justifying the killing of people. And that is very, very important to acknowledge here. That is definitely not what I am saying. Right? Every human life is worthy and sacred. And unfortunately, some of those human lives have incarnated at this time to teach us a collective lesson, which we can choose to learn and integrate and use our ability to respond to change things, that we may not continue in this kind of cycle of collective perpetuation of perpetrator and victim. So I had an experience in my early 20s where I was driving my car really fast on a cliff road. I obviously did not have much value for my own life. I was filled with anger and bitterness, and that was showing up in my driving. And I drove off the road. And the memory that I had for a very, very long time was that I drove off the road, the car went off the road, and the next second the car was back on the road and at standstill stop. So I drove off the cliff. And by some miracle, the car was back on the cliff. And for many years, whenever I think of that experience, I get goosebumps. I don't understand what happened. It doesn't make logical sense. And I eventually accredited it to my guides. They must have pushed me back on the road and stopped the car. And when I arrived in India in July, a lot of things erupted in my health and all sorts. But one of the things that happened as well is the floods of past life memories started coming back to me. And people started recommending me the book, Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And I eventually read this book, and at the same time I was reading the last book written by Neil Donald Walsh, which Home with God, it's called. And the combination of these two books and a lot of meditation and the flooding of memories jolted back this memory of the time I drove off the cliff. And the missing memory in the middle came back to me. And what happened actually was not that I was pushed back on the road. It was that I drove off the cliff and I died. And I was beyond resuscitation. And I crossed over, and my guides asked me, in quite a cheeky way, because I think they knew the answer already, okay, well, are you done? Are you done? And I said, no, I'm not done. I've got so much more I need to do. I mean, my life journey, my missions, the things I planned on doing here are not complete. And of course, they popped me back a few moments before I drove off the cliff. Probably in a parallel universe, because there are multiple parallel universes. And that memory coming back was so significant, because the lesson in that for me was, we do not go without our permission. We do not go until we're done. And that gives me a lot of peace in terms of understanding the greater narratives that are going on. Now, again, this does not make what is going on okay. And we all hold power to choose something different. And I'm going to say the self-work, the regulating your own nervous system, your own shadow work, that is important. But also what you do out in the world, that is important too. because there needs to be the understanding of the connection and the mirror, for we are all responsible. We are all responsible for what is unfolding. You know, I saw a post earlier today which really ruffled my feathers a little bit, but someone was saying, oh, those of you who pray for both sides have no backbone, something along those lines. And I just thought to myself, this, you know, not to shame that person at all, because obviously it's coming from a space of deep bitterness and anger and resentment, and all of that is justified and sacred. But I just thought to myself, I will never stop praying for the perpetrator, because to turn my back on any human is to turn my back on myself, and is to not love a part or an aspect of myself. And I will always pray that those hearts open, that those third eyes awaken, that they see what they are doing, that they see that it is themselves and their home that they harm, that they see the insanity and come back home, and come back home, and come back home. I will always pray for all people. Alright, so prayer session. Let us begin by taking some requests. What is it that you would like to pray for today? For those of you who are new, that speech was a little bit more heavy than what I normally am like, but it is heavy times. And my heart is sore today. And yeah, I feel a lot of need to express and highlight and be where I am. And yeah, let's bring it back now. Yes, inner peace, inner peace, inner peace, and outer peace. Honestly, outer peace. Absolutely. Yes, Swana, thank you for that contribution. How about justice? Scales of justice to balance out. What about an awakening of a new world? One based in love, community, growth. You know, not to mention the kind of harm we're doing to the environment at this time, right? Like Mother Earth, the womb of the earth. Yeah. Yeah. Can we just grow permaculture farms and like plant forests, right? Nurture, heal, and grow. May people be sacred with their words. The power of words. Healing for those who need it. Everybody needs healing, darling. All of us need healing. Absolutely. Healing, healing, healing. To release fear and replace it with love and faith. Okay, we're not going to use the word fear because we don't want to focus on that. We're just gonna bring in that love. That Bible verse, though I may walk through the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. An end to colonial capitalist patriarchy and hyper-individualism. Unity, authenticity, grace. Thank you, Anna. I'll give you a round of applause there, darling. I totally agree. May we turn towards unity, authenticity, grace. May we honor brown bodies. May we honor indigenous bodies. May it be, may it be. And may we see land not as something we own and profit from, but as something that we belong to, as custodians, as guardians. How can we bomb sacred lands? I will not use the words patriarchy, capitalism, or colonial while we are calling in, but I'm glad you used them, because let's call it what it is, right? Unity, that's the medicine. Unity, grace, authenticity. Thank you, Anna. Swana, hearts for you too. Goosebumps, Anna. Yes, stewards, Mary. Stewards. Or it's even, with pets, it's interesting how in the English language we talk about owning pets, but we don't own pets. We have the privilege of being their caregivers, right? Just as much as we don't own people. Like, look at the mess of slavery. Really, any of these ideas of power and dominance. Oh, may we see ourselves in it. May we see ourselves. May we heal it all. May we be the generation. May it end here. May we start anew. And so I would love to invite you to take your favorite prayer position, whatever your faith, whatever feels right for you. You might bring your hands together at your chest, connecting heart with the energy of above. You might come into a yogic posture. You may even come into a child's pose or come down to your knees. Whatever resonates for you in this moment, whatever feels sacred, and connect in with the sacred essence of all that is. A sacred essence that exists in every one of us. Whether we be brown bodies, indigenous bodies, perpetrators, plants, animals, the earth, the stars, wherever you are, whatever you are, however you identify, we are all connected. And even when we refuse to see it or we cannot feel it, we are still all connected. For whatever you wish to call that sacred, divine God, Allah, Goddess, Source Energy, Universe, that sacred energy, that current that runs underneath it all, within us all. The names matter not to the deity, but it matters that it resonates for you. I would like to call in the healed ancestral lines of those present and for those whom it resonates and permission is granted. I would like to acknowledge the presence of your guiding spirits, angels, or whatever you resonate with. That energy that protects and guides you, that is also aspect of the great divine spirit within us all. I call upon the forces of love, I call on Jesus, Mary, the Holy Spirit. I call upon the entire pantheon of archangels. I call in the blue team. I call in all our teams in the galaxies, the aliens that work in alignment with love, vibration, and healing. I call all of your powers to bring power to these words. May we call in balance. And for those of you who feel called as I weave prayer here today, if there is something that you resonate with particularly, I encourage you to use your voice and to speak it out loud into your space, to affirm it, to add your energy. For there is power in your voice. There is power in your action. Add your energy here. We call for resolutions of peace. We call for environments that allow us to cultivate nourishment and inner peace for all the peoples of this earth. We call for the honoring of all peoples, and in particular those who are historically and currently oppressed, brown bodies, indigenous bodies. We call for their protection, their elevation, their salvation, their liberation. We call for an end to insanity. We call for nurturing and love. We call for hearts that are opening, that are space holding, that are healing. We call for spaces of healing. We call for lands where seeds can be sown. We call for a way of seeing in this world that the land is not something we can own, but a privilege for us to care for, to nurture, that we are the guardians and protectors of those lands. And may we learn to honor those who have been protecting and honoring lands for millennia. When we see people, may we see ourselves. May we heal and integrate. May we open our hearts and see with eyes of compassion for all the purging that is happening, for all the revealing that is being shown. May we see our responsibility to heal, to learn, to grow. May we create a new world where we honor communities, healing, nourishment, sharing, honoring, respecting, connection. May we call in a world where our question in the morning is, how can I play? How can I be more adventurous? How can I be more light-hearted? May we call in a world where this is the possibility we present for all of our children. May the sacred lands of this earth be honored and respected. May the sacred oceans of this earth be honored and respected. May we redefine what wealth is. May we see wealth in the quality of love and connection within our communities. May we see wealth in our ability to heal, nourish, and hold each other. May we shape, shift, and transmute. May we be brave enough to face the shadow. May we be brave enough to integrate the shadow. May we be brave enough to choose love. May we be brave enough to never perpetuate these cycles again. May we truly come together as a global community. May we truly come together. Let there be balance. Let there be peace. Let there be justice. Let there be healing. Let there be peace. Let there be love upon this earth. And let the people be brave enough to choose it. For it is with you, Spirit, that we can navigate those shadows, knowing we are shielded and protected. Let there be peace. And may we arm ourselves with love and faith. Let those be our shields. Amen. Amen. And so it is, and so it is. Yes, Mary, don't forget the end of hyper-individualism. I think that the medicine for that one is to grow in community, right? That's the opposite, isn't it? Like to see ourselves as connected, as one with it all. Yes, because that disease of hyper-individualism, that is what has a lot of people turning a blind eye, not getting involved, as if we're not connected. Blessings, Michelle. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you enjoyed that. So much love, so much love, so much love. Cooperation. Truly, my love. Cooperation. Yes. Thank you, Swana. Many blessings to you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing your energy. Thank you for using your words. Thank you for hearing. Thank you for being brave enough to shift, to speak out, and to speak out in ways that don't attack. Because I think there's a lot of people speaking out, but instead of creating more allies for the integration of love and oneness and liberation, they are scaring people away. And I think that one needs to be compassionate for wherever it is that someone is on their perspective. There are always multiple ways to think or to see or to frame something, right? Build bridges, not walls. Exactly, Anna. Exactly. So instead of this energy, which, is very difficult for me sometimes, I'm just going to admit it. We do this energy. Oh, I see you. I hear where you are. Have you perhaps considered this? Or did you know that that's being disproven? Or, just gently. I think that there is a space and an important duty of some people to be in that very shout kind of out on the streets protesting kind of action, and that's not for me. I tend to work in more subtle ways, and just remember, there is a very well there's a very massive propaganda machine that is backed by a lot of money and power. And so even be compassionate to people way over on the other end. For they know not what they do, my loves. Even Jesus said, if someone strikes your face, turn the other cheek. And I think sometimes that is misinterpreted to mean just keep taking abuse. And I don't think it's about continuing to take abuse, but it's about learning that the perpetrator does not realize that they are perpetrating against themselves. Against themselves. Anyway, I definitely don't have all the answers, but I do know that medicine lies in powerful words, in powerful actions, in allowing healing to unfold, in allowing people to also express their anger, their hurt, their outrage, their, all of that stuff needs releasing. Might not always be done in the most comfortable way for some people, but that's not always up to us. That's not always up to us. And so just calling in for compassion and heart opening, and knowing that I chose to incarnate here at this time, and so did you. And it was not to sit idly and ignore what unfolds. It was to be a part of the change. And so how can we be a part of, in the most powerful way? How can we walk in a way that one day when we look back we go, yes, I'm proud of that. What kind of a legacy do you leave behind with your actions? Alright, gorgeous souls, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I love you. Merry Christmas to those of you who are celebrating. I hope that you will continue the prayer weaving as you move through the next day or so. And I hope that your healing echoes out into the world in the most beneficial ways possible. I am because you are. You can only see what you are, right? If there was ever a truth, you can only see what you are. Right? So when you want to point fingers at each other, see that part of yourself too. See that part of yourself too. Love you all.